Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. Now, from Terra Nova, these people do not sell retail, they sell only wholesale, and they do a lot of breeding and they do a lot of trialing as well. So that what happens is that they usually have the best of the best. Now, if you all remember, many years ago, the group of Shasta daisies got all of the composite type flowers in that group and all related, all got broken apart and all given new botanical names. Well, the Tanacetum is actually one of the ones out of this group. And so what they are is colored Shasta type daisies. So they really do well. They're great for cut flowers. They spring flower and often are called painted daisies, which is something that you will remember from the long time ago. So Tanacetum, Cocinium, Radiant, Deep Pink is the first one. And this painted daisy will actually bloom for you in your garden in early spring and bloom over a long period of time with deep pink blooms. And I do mean deep pink. They've got that yellow eye in the middle that you're so familiar with. They're compact, which I really do like. They're only going to be about knee height. And they don't fall over all the time. So they're tough, they're easy, they're cold hardy perennials. They're hardy to zone 3. They love the sun or semi-shade. They're great with butterflies and also deer resistant and of course for cutting. So you've got something that you can use as a filler in between other plants, or you can mix them in with the Shasta daisies, and therefore get a very nice contrast of the deep rosy pink with the white. And then there's Tanacetum, Cocinium, Radiant, light pink. So you've got a lighter pink. Now this one looks exactly the same. It's got the same hardiness, zone 3. Loves the sun, slight semi-shade. Butterflies, attracts those. Deer resistant, good for cutting. Long blooming light pink flowers as well in the spring, and it doesn't fall open and over. So this is a compact plant that really will look good in your garden. So you could actually mix these different ones with some of the ordinary Shasta daisies. So there's some of the ones that you can take a look at Tanacetums and or painted daisies. Then there's Thalictrum. Now, I've grown Thalictrum in my garden, and it does fairly well, but I always grew one of the old aquifoliums. Now, that means that they look like Aquilegia, at least the leaves do. And that fools everybody. But it also doesn't get the leaf miner. So there is an advantage to this one. It does love the sun. It is hardy to zone 5. And the Nimbus White is exactly that, a beautiful white, fluffy flower on top of the Aquilegia type leaves. Plant is relatively tall, 28 by 16 by 28. It makes a great show of white flowers that turn into lavender pink, and the seed heads sort of are interesting, so they sort of extend the blooming time. And the other nice thing about this one is that it blooms in the first year in your garden. So that's pretty good, okay? Attracts the butterflies as well. So I do like this one, but of course I've got one of the old ones, right? Then the same thing in the Thalictrum Nimbus Pink. Has all the same sizes, abilities, hardiness. and it's got the same type of leaves. The nice thing about this one is that it's a lavender pink flowers in sort of like massive puffy balls up at the top. So it really does have an interest in the garden with dark stems. So you've got a little bit of contrast there as well. It definitely needs to go into full sun, semi-shade, and I think you will like this one. It'll give you a different texture, height, because they're fairly vertical in their habit. And I think with the different type of flower, people will go, gee, what's that? So even though the leaves look like Aquilegia or a columbine, the flower is nowhere near what it does. There is another one called Black Stockings. Now this Thalictrum, all the same type of hardiness and sun and butterflies, but it's 48 by 24 by 58. This one's a big boy, okay? It has nearly black stems, green leaves. It's got a fluffy lavender pink flowers, and it really is quite showy. Of course, being this big, you're going to sort of notice it as well. So it's not something you're going to just sort of tuck in a corner. This thing's going to do rip-roaring things in your garden. Now there is one more. This one doesn't look like a Thalictrum. And this one will really quite surprise people. This one is called Thalictrum Evening Star. It's more of a woodland shade and container perennial. Its foliage looks more like an epimedium. Its leaves are olive, tan, copper to red-brown on wiry stems. So it's going to be very different, but the veins are also silver. So it looks like silver stars with all these other colors mixed in between. The tufts of the lavender flowers float over the foliage in spring and throughout the summer. It really does do all of this and does it well in the shade as well as dappled shade or very light sun. How's that? Hardy to zone 5. It's a perennial that you really ought to go and look for. This one will be harder to find for sale as well, but well worth it, particularly if you're doing shade gardening. Now, speaking of shade gardening, there are Tiarellas. Now, Tiarellas basically are very, very colorful coral bells with very interesting leaf shapes. So that was the easiest way for someone who's a little more familiar with plants to understand. You want mildew resistance. You want them to be attractive in the spring, summer, fall, and winter. Compact, reblooms. You want all of these. Some of the trailers are actually been bred for dry, shady areas and fillers for containers. So actually quite neat. Perennials for containers, yeah, some of them will do very well there. And the trailers can actually replace English ivy for use in the garden. Okay, so here's a few that you may want to try. It is a rather large group. They've been doing a lot of breeding on this one because of the features that you're going to see. In other words, it likes the shade and gives you color in shade. Jeepers Creepers. Tiarella. It has sort of a maple leaf type leaf. Its foliage is well marked. It's got the sort of dark iron cross type begonia center, and it's very deeply cut almost into like a maple leaf, but the points are rounded instead of being pointy or sharp. It's green all winter, It stays above the ground depending on the hardiness. It's hardy to zone 4, loves the shade, light shade, deer resistant, and so it really is a great plant for the garden as well. It does give you some winter color, and that's unusual. Then there's Pacific Crest. Now this one almost reminds me of a coleus. I don't know why, but it does. Even though it's the highly cut leaves, and it's really well center patterned in more of a maroon red with green edging, it's great, it's glossy, it's good as a ground cover or in hanging baskets in shade, of course, and it makes a great non-climbing ivy. So it means shade, hardy to zone 4, and yet it's going to be a ground cover. So in the summer, it's got more of a green leaves. Flowers are going to be white, just like Jeepers Creepers, but they're going to have this interesting foliage as well. Then there's Candy Stripper. Yeah, Candy Stripper. Okay. Candy Stripper is an interesting one in the fact that it has large, lush green leaves that are stippled with a dark sort of lobe down the center of each leaf. And it has a mounding habit. It's got very large leaves, pink flower buds, and then the flowers open white. They're sort of a foamy flower, okay? And it sort of looks like burgundy lace anthurium or Japanese ferns, okay? Or even maybe a pulmonaria, okay? Hardy to zone 4, loves the shade, a little bit of light sun, and of course it gives winter interest, and its deer resistance 10 inches by 16 by 14. Crow feather, not a great name, I don't think, but bright green leaves cut deeply marked with a black feather, so down through. It's the best winter color of the Tiarellas. So if you're interested in winter interest in a garden, this is the one to put in there. It has a colors of pink, red, purples, and blacks. And it's a very strong grower that mounds. Light pink flowers in the spring. Loves the shade. Deer resistant. Winter interest. Light shade, hardy to zone 4. See? Good plant for the garden, right? Pink Skyrocket is the next Tiarella. It has the pink flowering, and it's really quite interesting in the fact that it's got heads of shrimp pink flowers that are held above the really deeply cut and marked foliage. Full color is, in full sun, is sort of a burnish bronze, but in the shade it's a deep shiny black. Hardy to zone 4, loves the shade, deer resistant, winter interest 6 inches by 12 by 11. That's just some of the interesting Tiarellas that you can go and put into your garden in shady areas to give you interest with other great shade plants. I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.